Autism, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going? That's the topic for today's video. Oh, almost dropped my phone on me. That would have not been good. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to kind of talk a little bit about Tylenol and autism because for the last day, I couldn't stop hearing about it. Now, before we go into this video, I need to just say this, okay? I am not a doctor, okay? I'm not a medical professional. So if you want to know anything about autism or Tylenol or the intricacies of it, go to a doctor, okay? Get information from a doctor. I'm here to make jokes and have some laughs. And you know what? Honestly, the last few days, I've been having nothing but laughs. I feel like we really live in what I'm gonna dub as the roaring 20s. Again, Pondo, Electric Boogaloo. You know, when I was in California, the other day, I saw Homeland Security post this shit. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is gonna blow your mind. So there was a video that was posted of Ash Ketchum. He gonna catch them all with the Department of Homeland Security. And this is Homeland Security rating pretty much places they suspect illegals to be at. Now, it wasn't just this alone. Obviously, you go down the road, and this is just where it gets even wilder. Not only were they challenging Nintendo's legal teams, they were making Pokemon cards, dude. Here's an illegal 1 HP pedophilia. That's their crime. God damn. We can... Weakness is an ice type. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you just can't take it seriously. I was having this discussion with my dad. I'm like, Dad, you know, when I was a kid, he was just watching Anderson Cooper and all this boring shit. He didn't have the luxuries of seeing his childhood shit be used inside actual verifiable government posts. But anyways, this is not about troubling Nintendo lawsuits potentially. Nintendo's not going to sue the federal government, okay? They're not going to take that risk. Now, one of the things that came out, yesterday was apparently there was a fact evidence suggests link between acetaminophen and autism. So acetaminophen, for anybody that doesn't know, is basically Tylenol, okay? You know, a little red bottle you get, you got a little headache, you take a little pill of Tylenol, some over-the-counter shit. Well, apparently that administration does not believe popping more pills is always the answer for better health. To an extent, I also kind of agree with that too. There is mounting evidence finding a connection between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and autism. So before you guys are wondering, whoa, can I get a little bit of that autism with some pills right now? No, your mom has to take it while she's pregnant, okay? So if you're born right now, you've missed the train. Now, I don't consider autism to be something scary or spooky. You know, a lot of people will kind of say, oh, it's like an illness or a disease, and I frankly think that's offensive. I think everybody can have a little bit of autism. I think it is just a spectrum. Autism, for anybody that doesn't know, is I believe, social disorder where, people have difficulties understanding certain cues, certain social understandings. And again, it is a spectrum, so people can have a very light touch of the autism. And then, of course, you have people that have extremely severe autism, which can absolutely impact their life negatively, right? Now, obviously, look, I'm not here to say it's gross or disgusting or that we should 100% get rid of it. I think, obviously, at the end of the day, if you can take away some of the things that affect the day-to-day life, especially, for a kid, anybody, any human being, I think, it's good, right? Do I equate autism to something like Alzheimer's or something like, Huntington's disease or AIDS or something? Absolutely not. To me, autism is just a possible... it's a diagnosis that comes in, and, people can have a very light touch of it, a very severe touch of it. Again, I'm not a doctor. I just look at these things from just a general human perspective. So again, going down over here, the president has joined the administration officials to announce major progress in understanding the root causes of autism, which I guess supersedes every other medical condition. Like I said earlier, just a few seconds ago, we've got pretty serious medical problems in the world to focus on, right? We've got various cancers that are taking people's lives. We've got, again, Alzheimer's disease. We've got, crazy diseases that we need to find cures to. And somehow it's like, whoa, let's put autism above all of it. So anyways, this apparently exploded in diagnoses over the past 2 decades. And again, I believe the rate of diagnoses also correspond with tons of other sub-diagnoses being thrown into this as well. But anyways, they do actually link some evidence, right? And they link evidence from Harvard, they link evidence from various universities like Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai. So again, it's always funny whenever like any of these sides throw their credentials out there. It's like, I remember when I was talking about Harvard probably like a month ago, they were like, how could you believe that wokey university? And now it's like, well, now it's a smart, now they're smart. Again, you got to have some real critical thinking. Anyways, these are actual studies that you can read and they're provided and you can understand yourself. Now look, I ain't a fucking expert, okay? I'm not. So I'm just going to believe what the experts have to say. Now, you might be like, whoa, Mudo, what's Tylenol's response to this? They were like, cute diversion. Now release the files. Misinformation, by the way, okay? That was just a joke. Obviously, the world ain't that based yet for Tylenol to have that crazy of a response. No, the actual response was a little bit more boring. So I'm going to read you their official, actual response here real quick. So this is, from Tylenol's boring website over at their safety and dosing FAQs. Should I be concerned about Tylenol and autism? Okay? Goddamn, big ass words. We understand the recent media coverage you're reading may cause concern or lead to questions. So they say credible, independent scientific data continues to show no proven link between taking acetaminophen and autism. So here they also provide their own studies. The Autism Science Foundation, the American Academy of Pediatrics. We've got nerd on nerd action going on. And then they say one thing that the White House doesn't say. Our best advice, talk to your healthcare professional. As our label says, if pregnant or breastfeeding, talk to your healthcare professional before use. And I think that's the best advice anybody can provide. Obviously, a lot of people have been digging up crazy old tweets from Tylenol, like, we actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concern today. And this isn't the gotcha that some people think it is. Bro, anybody is going to say that. Any company is going to say. It's almost like some people have not read any of the boilerplate warnings that are written on the side of anything. Usually on the side of any box, you'll find things like drug facts if pregnant or breastfeeding, because yes, if your child is sucking milk out of your titties and the night before you were on a drinking bender, you do have to pump out your milk before you get, again, I feel like you don't have to be a doctor to understand this shit, okay? Anytime any box says ask a healthcare professional before use, it's because you're supposed to do that. Your doctor knows your body, okay? They've done tests on you. Generally, even the same drug can have a different reaction depending on who the fucking person is. Do I live in clown world that this isn't common understanding? What happened? What kind of fucking brain parasite has attacked? What kind of social media use has attacked everyone to not have basic fucking common understanding? Like, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a comment in the bottom of this video right here. Oh, Muda, what the fuck would you know? You're not a fucking doctor. Bro, the people who are making this claim are not doctors either, okay? To give you an idea, this claim, this sort of stuff comes from the health secretary, who is Robert F. Kennedy right now. Now, not to disregard RFK Jr., but, he's an American politician. He's a lawyer. He's an author, a conspiracy theorist, and an anti-vaccine activist. Okay, now this could be coming from wokey, Wikipedia, but nowhere here is he actually a doctor, okay? The guy is, I would understand, a pretty prominent lawyer. And to be fair, he's a pretty fit fucking guy from my understanding. He looks good for his age. And to give you an idea, he's got some medical issues that he's had. I think he had a parasite that ate like parts of his fucking brain. I think that he's a guy that, genuinely actually does probably have really good intentions, okay, about the health of the people. But because he's not a doctor, it kind of takes listening to him a little questionable, okay? If he was a doctor, maybe that would be one thing. But he's not. Now, of course, looking into RFK, even when it came to things like vaccine studies, apparently he demanded that these vaccine studies be retracted simply because apparently these studies, these Danish studies, by the way, found no link between aluminum and vaccines and chronic diseases in children. And it's just weird when, any kind of conflicting information comes out that you ask for things to be censured or retracted because it doesn't fit your worldview. I don't know if it was like Ben Shapiro that said this, but it's like facts over feelings or some shit like that. It was like, if the facts do not align with your beliefs, it's your beliefs that have to be the ones that change, right? Simple as that. Somebody tells me, Muda, the world is fucking flat, okay? And we know clearly the world is round, okay? We don't have to change our beliefs for that person. We just have to understand that, we have to contest that person in reality. And by the way, this comes off pretty hot off the heels of apparently Google also admitting that they were censoring users, underneath that previous administration, the Biden one, right? So according to a press release, Google admitted to the House Judiciary that the Biden administration pressured Google to censor Americans and remove content that did not violate policies. Which is fucked up, if true, okay? I don't believe it. I'm going to die on the hill and say people should just have free speech and say whatever the fuck they want on the internet, as long as they fit within that site's TOS. And generally, this all related to things like political speech on COVID-19 and even the election misinformation stuff, which, here's the funny thing. So you already banned these people, killed their fucking platforms, and now you want them to come back. Look, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be banning anyone. You should just literally be allowing people to contest. The strong idea, the more logical idea, should be the one that wins towards the end. I never believe in things like censorship. I think anytime you censor somebody, it just pushes them to another platform and almost gives them legitimacy. But of course, you go down over here, they said that the administration's censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. Why the fuck did you do it? Oh, again, because a lot of these tech companies or these multi-billion-dollar companies don't really give a shit about any of their ethics or beliefs or values as a company. Again, it's really just kissing the ass of whoever is fucking, at the top right now. Public debate should never come at the expense of relying authorities. The company will never use third-party fact-checkers. Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech. Bro, these companies don't care. It's like when you read some like crazy Californian company and they always talk about, our values are this and whatnot, and they're taking like military contracts and doing the exact opposite of what they preach. Bro, this is just the world we live in, okay? It's fucked up. These companies don't really care. They're just always going to kiss the ass of whoever's at the top. Bro, in 4 years, if things completely flip, they'll completely flip this stance too. It's crazy. But yeah, the only reason I went off onto that side tangent was because obviously when you go to the government, right, when you go to the actual like White House page, they'll tell you the fake news went into a frenzied hyperventilation. Dude. You know what? I will say something right now. There has never been an administration more fucking jaw-dropping, like, meme-tacular and funny. Okay, these guys know how to take that social media game to the next level. They've made the act of reading a White House press release not boring, which is pretty fucking awesome, okay? All right, granted, we can all kind of sit in shock and awe anytime, like, a insane post comes out, but they've made it absolutely interesting for the entire world to watch. Now, look, at the end of the day, I don't necessarily know if the Tylenol and the autism link is necessarily valid or not valid. What I have seen is there have been very conflicting informations. So, for instance, looking at Axios, when they talked about this, for instance, when they brought this situation up, some of the actual links that the White House used were also apparently disproven. So look, what's really kind of wild about this too is obviously looking at like Axios, for instance, which kind of read between the lines over here. The bottom line for this came out for the fact that there isn't strong enough scientific evidence to show that this causes autism. And even the FDA, so again, this is the FDA saying it, okay, the Food and Drug Administration of the US, part of the current administration, even they said, look, evidence in recent years has suggested a correlation between the use of pregnancy and the subsequent diagnosis of conditions like autism and ADHD. It is important to note that while an association between acetaminophen and neurological conditions has been described in many studies, a causal relationship has not been established, and there are contrary studies in the scientific literature. It is also noted that acetaminophen is the only over-the-counter drug approved for use to treat fevers during pregnancy, and high fevers in pregnant women can pose a risk to their children, which is, again, the reason why you have to go to a doctor to even confirm that you should be taking this while you're pregnant, because there could be an adverse reaction specifically to your body that could not affect anybody else. And look, I'm not a doctor, but even that is just common enough knowledge for me to know. It's one of the reasons why everyone says talk to a healthcare professional before you do something to your body that could affect you and possibly other people, especially a pregnant fetus in your body. And look, at the end of the day, going into this entire situation, people are kind of arguing and fighting over this. So even like RFK's like original groups, like the groups that he founded, such as the CHD, which is a Children's Health Defense, which is dubbed anti-vaccine by the guys over at Ars Technica, also got involved and started to retweet posts where they were saying, listen, you can't blame Tylenol, okay? So you have to go back to the vaccines. This was not caused by Tylenol. And again, even when it came to Georgia Coalition for Vaccine Choice, in an unhinged Facebook post that I unfortunately can't pull up because I think it might be removed, we didn't wait 20 years for Bobby to finally speak and then get served Tylenol as an answer. And look, I'm not here to make a judgment call on somebody's beliefs or somebody as a person. I don't know who the fuck RFK Jr. really is. But I have to assume that, this guy probably does care about children, but he's also not a medical professional. He's not a healthcare professional. This is somebody that is kind of making claims that look, in a room, if there's like 100 doctors, and it seems like if like 90 of those doctors are saying one thing and the other 10 doctors are saying another thing, I'm probably going to side with the other 90 doctors in the situation that, apparently have a consensus that, their opinion is right. Look, at the end, herd mentality when it comes to these ideas tends to win. And look, I'm not going to jump and say the 10 other doctors are unqualified quacks or nut jobs. Those doctors know more about medicine and the human body than I will ever do in my entire life. But sometimes, as smart as you can be, you can always be wrong as well. That's something that anybody has to contend with, okay? It's called putting aside your fucking ego and accepting reality or fact in a situation. But to kind of whittle it all back into, right? This Tylenol autism story is kind of fucking insane. It's kind of, the next big talk about point. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of this is just kind of diversion from like us talking about, those Epstein files, a lot of other criticisms. But look, in the end, I think for the people that are kind of really inflamed by this, or those people that are, expectant parents, right? Like, look, obviously people want the best for their kids. People want the best for their kids as they're brewing inside, as they're cultivating, so to speak. And I'm sure this is going to be something that people are going to be questioning, especially if you're a pregnant woman and you don't want your child to have a problem down the road or a complication. Maybe you can avoid your Tylenol usage or something down the road. But again, just go to a fucking doctor. Ask the doctor. Okay, simple as that. And one thing I want to say, obviously, as the screen is blanked out for a second, is I want to just reiterate that, autism is not like some really incredible, scary illness to have, right? There's almost a weird stigma that people are bringing up because of some of these comments. I've met autistic children. I've met people with autism. They are nothing but amazing people. And, the autism, it is what it is, right? It doesn't necessarily make somebody a bad person or it makes them, worse at something or whatever. These are just people who live their life and they're a little bit different, right? They're a little bit different than the normal, and that's not really bad at all. That's not bad. It's not like this is somebody, who has a serious life-threatening illness that, truly legitimately impacts their life in a very meaningful manner, right? And obviously there are people that are severely autistic where, things obviously are affected because of their condition. But in most cases, people with autism, they just are a little bit different. It is what it is. I don't think it's just this weird stigma that kind of gets made because of comments like this. And I feel like it might be worth saying because I've been reading a lot of parents who are obviously a little bit pissed off that, this just, this focus on like kids with autism and it being this incredibly horrible thing is such a stark contrast to the actual reality that parents face, right? You can still, obviously you still love these children and these children are still amazing. They're still just as, some would say they're more awesome, right? It's weird, right? So I wanted to also bring the stigma into this as well because it's one thing that I've seen brought up by parents who feel that, you know, unnecessarily people look at their kids in a more negative light, when really, you know, with proper love, attention, and, you know, just a different way of handling them, they live their life out, you know, amongst normal people, quote unquote, with no real issue. I will say, this administration has been probably one of the most entertaining things to watch, because it feels like every week something new just comes, okay? Something new just gets thrown at you. We haven't even gone through a year of this presidency, and I'll be real with you, every week has been fucking memorable, okay? Something new just comes up all the time. It's crazy shit to see. You know, it's crazy if I'm getting into the political side of things to an extent, dipping my toe there and talking about these things, because you just can't escape it. But I did want to talk about this because ultimately, it was something that I felt had a lot of misinformation flying around, and I wanted to at least make a video where I could pull all of the relevant information and not necessarily chastise, you know, one side or the other. I mean, I'm definitely more biased towards the, I guess you could say, the wokey doctors, if you will, you know, who are saying that talk to a healthcare professional, okay? Talk to somebody, because I don't personally think that autism and Tylenol are fucking linked. But then again, I'm also not a doctor. And these guys have been using multiple universities and like groups as ammunition in their quest for whoever is right. And look, somewhere the truth lies, okay? Somewhere the truth is sitting there. And it's up to you to put in your due diligence and your effort, like I have, to try to understand what the truth is. Don't just listen to a press release. Don't just read a tweet. Actually understand the material you're engaging with so you can come to a more concise, more educated conclusion that beats 99.9% of the fucking arguments and shit that are roaming around in the world. You know, it kind of takes me back to, like, I think 4 or 5 years ago when I talked about, what was it, 5G and, like, you know, the conspiracy theories surrounding it. You know, this is something that is a little bit more grounded than that, but it's still something that, again, you need to treat with some serious nature. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it, I am out.